Welcome to Pillow Talk Dreams, where every night becomes a story and every story leads you to peace. If you love calm voices, gentle journeys, and stories that help you drift into dreams, then don't forget to subscribe and let your nights be a little softer. Now close your eyes and let the story begin. Welcome, you've entered a place where the noise of the world fades away and only the quiet rhythm of your heartbeat remains. Short pause here. Every story is a gentle whisper meant just for you, crafted to ease your thoughts, to slow your breathing, and to remind you that you are safe and never alone. Soft breath sound, tiny pause. Tonight's story isn't just words. It's a soft journey through time, memory, and love, told in a voice that listens as much as it speaks. 3-second pause, piano swell, so find your comfort, rest your head, and let the world drift away. Because here, under the quiet sky, you are part of something tender, something timeless, something beautifully still. Pause, sound of distant rain fades slightly. The night had the scent of cold iron and dreams. Snow fell like whispered confessions upon the quiet station, each flake vanishing before it touched the ground. Somewhere in the distance, a train exhaled a plume of silver steam, rising through the lamplight like a sigh that had waited all winter to be heard. I stood there, still as the frost on the rails, watching the Vienna Express hum patiently beneath the glow of the gas lamps. Its carriages shimmered faintly, gold against the blue of night, like a promise waiting to be kept. People moved softly around me, a mother holding her child close, a gentleman lighting a cigarette that flared briefly against the snow, a porter calling out names that dissolved into the air like ghosts of old departures. And I, alone with a suitcase of memories I never meant to carry, stood between leaving and longing, between the past I could not return to and the city that might forgive me for it. Sound cue. Faint hiss of steam. Soft metallic thud of luggage door closing. When the conductor called for boarding, his voice echoed through the frosted night, steady, certain, and kind. I hesitated only once, because every journey begins not with motion but with the quiet ache of letting go. Then I stepped forward and the world seemed to follow. Sound cue. Train door opens, warm air rushes out. Muffled chatter inside. The warmth of the cabin wrapped around me like memory itself. Amber light flickered on polished wood. The scent of coal and coffee mingled in the air. Outside the window, snow drifted past the glass like tiny pieces of time. I found my seat, a single window berth with a brass lamp, its shade trembling softly with each breath of the train. When I touched the window pane, it was cold, but beneath the glass, I could see my reflection, half hidden in steam and shadow. I almost didn't recognize the man looking back, tired eyes, hands that had written too many letters never sent, a heart still learning how to stay quiet. And then the train shuddered once, sighed deeply, and began to move. Sound cue. Slow, rhythmic click-clack of wheels beginning, soft whistle echoing in distance. The city lights slipped away, melting into snow and silence. The rhythm steadied, a lullaby made of steel and distance. And in that moment, as the first stars broke through the clouds, I realized I wasn't traveling to Vienna. I was traveling back into myself. That's when I saw her, a woman in the corridor, pausing by the glass door, her coat dusted with snow, her eyes carrying something familiar, not sorrow, not joy, something in between. She hesitated, then smiled, the kind of smile that asks nothing, but stays with you long after you've forgotten everything else. And just like that, the journey truly began. Morning did not arrive all at once. It drifted softly, like a secret the night wasn't quite ready to share. The snow outside had stopped, but the world still wore its quiet whiteness, a silence so pure it almost felt alive. I hadn't truly slept. The movement of the train had become a kind of heartbeat, slow, certain, eternal. and somewhere between midnight and dawn, my thoughts had settled into a strange calm, as though time itself had decided to rest. The woman, Alina, still sat across from me, her head resting lightly against the window. The glass had gathered frost around the edges, and her reflection shimmered there, half dream, half memory. When the first golden light touched the mountains, she stirred. Her eyelashes fluttered open, and she smiled the soft, uncertain smile of someone remembering where they are. "Good morning," she whispered. Her voice, low, melodic, and threaded with sleep, felt like warmth returning to a cold room. "Good morning," I said. "Did you sleep well?" She nodded, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "I dreamed I was walking through Vienna again," she said softly, "but everything was covered in snow. Even the statues in the gardens had frost on their faces. They looked peaceful. Morning did not arrive all at once. It drifted softly, like a secret the night wasn't quite ready to share. The snow outside had stopped, but the world still wore its quiet whiteness, a silence so pure it almost felt alive. I hadn't truly slept. The movement of the train had become a kind of heartbeat, slow, certain, eternal. And somewhere between midnight and dawn, my thoughts had settled into a strange calm, as though time itself had decided to rest. The woman, Alina, still sat across from me, her head resting lightly against the window. The glass had gathered frost around the edges, and her reflection shimmered there, half dream, half memory. When the first golden light touched the mountains, she stirred. Her eyelashes fluttered open, and she smiled the soft, uncertain smile of someone remembering where they are. "Good morning," she whispered. Her voice, low, melodic, and threaded with sleep, felt like warmth returning to a cold room. "Good morning," I said. "Did you sleep well?" A gentle knock came at the door, the porter with his polite half-bow. "Breakfast is served, sir, madam," he said. Alina glanced toward me, her eyes bright with the first light of morning. "Will you join me?" she asked. Her invitation carried no expectation, just quiet kindness and something I hadn't felt in a long time: belonging. The dining car felt like stepping into another world. Golden morning light spilled through frost-edged windows, illuminating the brass rails and deep cherrywood walls. White tablecloths rippled gently with each sway of the train, and silverware gleamed like liquid light. Outside, the mountains rose, tall, silent guardians of the valley below. Inside, the air smelled of coffee, warm bread, and faint perfume. Alina took a seat by the window, her gloved fingers resting near the porcelain cup set before her. She looked up at me, eyes sparkling faintly. "They still serve Viennese chocolate," she said. "My mother used to order it every winter." Her voice carried something tender, not sadness, not nostalgia, but the soft ache of remembering something beautiful you can never return to. We spoke quietly, our voices blending with the hum of the train and the low hiss of steam. She told me she'd spent the past few years in Florence, teaching painting to children whose laughter filled the narrow Italian streets. But now, she said, it was time to return home. To Vienna, she added, with a look I couldn't quite read, to finish something I started long ago. "And you?" she asked after a pause. "What are you traveling toward?" I smiled faintly, staring into my coffee. "Maybe not toward anything," I said. "Maybe just away." Her gaze softened. "Sometimes," she whispered, "we have to leave in order to arrive." The violin's notes floated through the air, trembling, tender, imperfectly human. Alina closed her eyes, listening. "That sound," she said, "it feels like home." I nodded. "My mother played the piano," I murmured. "Every morning before sunrise. Even now I wake expecting to hear her music. But there's only silence." She looked at me for a long moment, not pitying, not curious, just present. Then she said quietly, "Silence isn't the absence of music. It's the moment before the next note." The words lingered like perfume, soft, fleeting, unforgettable. Sound cue. Rhythmic train hum grows softer. steady heartbeat of wheels beneath dialogue. We stayed there long after breakfast had ended, talking in half sentences and long silences. Outside, the world blurred trees, rivers, villages, a painting brushed in white and gold. Every so often our hands would almost touch, and though they never did, the space between them felt alive, as if it too were breathing. Elena laughed once quietly. "When I was a child," she said, "I believed trains could erase time. You get on in one life and step off in another." I smiled. "Maybe that's true. Or maybe time simply slows down long enough for us to see what we've been missing." Sound cue. Train enters a tunnel, echoing rumble, flicker of lights. For a few seconds the world went dark. Only the soft glow of the table lamp remained, casting her face in warm amber light. When the train emerged into daylight again, the mountains outside blazed white, their peaks catching fire with the rising sun. Alina turned toward the window, eyes wide. "Every time I see this," she whispered, "I remember that beauty exists quietly, whether we notice it or not." Her words felt like something meant to be written down, but I didn't. Some things are meant only to be felt once. As the morning grew brighter, she stood. "I'm going to the observation car," she said softly. "The view is breathtaking through the next valley." I nodded but said nothing. She hesitated, then smiled that same delicate, knowing smile. "I'll see you there," she said. And then she was gone, her reflection fading along the polished glass of the corridor. I sat there alone, listening to the echo of her footsteps fade into the hum of the train. The air still held her perfume, and the seat across from me still carried her warmth. Outside, the snow began again, softly, endlessly, and I whispered to myself, "Maybe we meet certain souls only once, but they leave their echo in every silence after." The day slipped away like silk through fingers. By the time I found my way to the observation car, the world had turned to gold. Snow shimmered under the fading sunlight, mountains stood in quiet majesty, ancient, patient, eternal. Inside, the carriage was nearly empty. Only the low hum of the train and the faint whisper of voices filled the space. Elena stood by the window, her gloved hand resting on the brass rail, her gaze fixed on the horizon where the light broke against the snow. She turned when I approached, and in that moment, something in her eyes softened, as though she'd been waiting for me without quite knowing it. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried like music. "Yes," I said, "almost too beautiful to belong to this world." She smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why it feels like a dream, because we know we can't stay here forever." Sound cue. Train enters a high mountain pass, wind deepens, echoing softly through tunnels. We stood side by side, watching the light change across the valley below. It was the kind of silence that didn't need to be filled, a silence that said everything. After a long while she spoke again. "When I was 16, she said quietly, "I used to ride this train every winter. My father would play the violin in the dining car, and my mother would sketch the passengers while they slept." Her eyes drifted toward the window, the reflection of her face blending with the pale sky. "I thought the world was endless then, that every journey was the beginning of something." "And now?" I asked softly. "Now," she said after a pause, "I think journeys are where endings learn to be gentle." Sound cue. Faint rumble as train enters a tunnel, low echo of metal and wind. For a few seconds, the world went dark again. The lamps flickered, shadows trembled across her face, and I found myself studying the delicate line of her jaw, the calm grace in the way she breathed. When the train emerged into daylight, her eyes caught the reflection of the sun on snow, and for the briefest heartbeat, I forgot everything except the way the light loved her. She noticed me looking and smiled softly, as though she understood something I hadn't yet said. "Tell me," she whispered, "what do you see out there?" I turned back toward the window. "I see 1,000 miles of silence," I said. and a single reason to remember it. Sound cue, train slows slightly, gentle clatter of cups from another carriage. We took seats near the rear window. The landscape outside was vast, rivers frozen in glass, pine forests bending beneath the weight of snow. Alina leaned back, her head against the velvet seat, eyes half closed as though listening to something only she could hear. "Do you ever write any more?" she asked suddenly. I hesitated. "Not for a long time." "Why?" I looked down at my hands. "Because every story I began turned into a goodbye." She turned her head toward me, her voice softer than the falling snow. "Maybe that's all stories are, goodbyes written beautifully enough to sound like hope." Sound cue. Low murmur of wind through cracks. Rhythm of wheels slows then steadies again. The train wound through a high pass now, sheer cliffs on one side, a river glinting below like liquid glass. For a while, neither of us spoke. The world outside seemed too sacred for words. Then Alina said quietly, "I think people travel for two reasons: to find something they've lost, or to leave behind what they can't fix." I smiled faintly. "Which one are you?" She met my eyes. "Both," she said. Sound cue. Faint violin returns, this time closer, slow, haunting melody drifting through car. The music reached us like memory. It filled the air, tender and imperfect, each note trembling like a heartbeat. Alina closed her eyes. "My father used to play this piece," she whispered. "He said music is proof that emotions don't need words." I nodded slowly. "Maybe love is the same." Her eyes opened again, glistening in the golden light. "And yet," she said, "we still try to name it, don't we?" "Because we're afraid to lose it," I said. She smiled sadly. "Or because we already have." Sound cue. Train whistle echoes softly through the mountains, faint wind hush. The sun had begun to set now, a slow descent of gold into pale lavender sky. The world outside glowed like a dream unraveling gently at the edges. I turned to her. "Alina," I said softly, "when this journey ends, what then?" She looked down, her gloved fingers tracing the edge of the table. "I don't know," she said. "Maybe nothing ends. Maybe it just changes trains." We both laughed quietly, the kind of laughter that trembles between two hearts that know too well what silence means. Sound cue. Slow rhythmic wheels. Violin fades into distance. Night returned gently, folding over the Alps like a blanket of shadow. Inside the train, lamps glowed amber, casting halos of warmth upon the glass. Alina rested her head near the window again. I could see her reflection beside mine, two silhouettes framed by passing stars. For a long time we didn't move. The world slipped past us, white valleys, dark tunnels, quiet villages, and it felt as though the train was no longer moving through space, but through time itself. Sound cue, faint whisper of wind, train steady. I wanted to speak, to tell her something I didn't yet understand, but before I could, she whispered, "Do you believe people meet for a reason?" I nodded slowly. "Yes. I think sometimes the universe lets us find each other, just long enough to remember what love sounds like." She smiled, eyes half closed. "Then I'm glad I heard it." Her hand brushed mine, barely a touch, soft as breath, but it was enough to silence every storm that had ever lived inside me. Sound cue, distant whistle fades, rhythm softens. Outside, the snow began again, fine, delicate, endless. The train curved around a frozen lake, its reflection shimmering on the glassy surface below. And as I watched her, peaceful, head bowed, eyelashes resting against her skin, I realized that not all journeys take us somewhere new. Some simply bring us home, to a moment, to a feeling, to someone we were always meant to find. Night had grown deeper, the kind of night that felt both endless and safe. Outside the window, snow fell in slow motion, each flake catching the dim glow of passing lamps like sparks of forgotten dreams. Alina had fallen asleep beside me. Her breathing was soft, steady, in rhythm with the turning wheels below our feet. I watched the landscape drift past frozen rivers, half-buried fences, and tiny villages wrapped in candlelight. The world looked peaceful, distant, as if it had forgotten the noise of time. Pause, faint wind sound for a moment. I imagined the train wasn't moving at all, that it was the earth turning quietly beneath us, carrying our story toward its ending. Sound cue, train whistle echoes faintly, fading into distance. When she stirred, she smiled sleepily, her voice hushed, almost fragile. Are we still in the mountains? Almost through, I whispered. The dawn will meet us before Vienna. She looked out the window, her reflection trembling against the glass. I wish the night were longer, she said softly. So do I. There was a silence, not empty, but full, the kind of silence that holds everything you can't bring yourself to say. Sound cue. Train slows slightly, muffled sounds of rails turning. A cup rattles in distance. After a while, she reached into her coat and pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. Its corners were worn, its pages yellowed by time. She placed it on the table between us. I want you to have this, she said. What is it? My sketches, she whispered. Of people I met, moments I never wanted to forget. Every journey I've taken lives here. I opened the cover gently. Inside, pencil drawings bloomed like captured breaths of faces half-turned, cities seen through rain, a violin resting on a chair. And there, on the last page, a sketch of the very carriage we sat in now, with a faint figure at the window looking out. It's you, she said, smiling. I drew it when you were writing in the cafe car, before we ever spoke. Soft pause, heart of emotion, something inside me ached, a quiet, tender ache that felt like love finally finding its name. Sound cue, soft hum of train. Gentle piano continues under narration. Alina, I said, my voice barely a whisper, why do you give this to me? She looked down, then out the window again. Because I've learned that the things we keep too long fade anyway. But the things we give away, sometimes they stay alive in someone else. Pause, I couldn't find words, so I just took her hand, not tightly, but with the quiet understanding that all beautiful things are borrowed from time. Sound cue, low wind through tunnel echoing softly, piano becomes slower, deeper. Hours passed in silence. The train slipped through valleys and tunnels, the world outside dissolving into mist. At one point, I dozed, half dreaming of cities blurred by snowfall, half awake to the warmth of her shoulder against mine. When I opened my eyes again, the first light of dawn brushed the sky, a faint silver line rising above the horizon. Vienna was close. Sound cue, faint birds outside, dawn ambience joined soft train sounds. Alina stood, gathering her bag. Her movements were slow, deliberate, as though each gesture carried the weight of a goodbye. You're leaving here? I asked. She nodded. There's someone I need to visit, someone I said I'd return to a long time ago. Her voice trembled slightly, like a leaf in soft wind. But I think I already found what I came for. She smiled, a small, quiet smile that could break a heart gently. Sound cue, train whistle, clear, distant, carried by morning air. The train began to slow. Outside, Vienna emerged from the mist, spires and rooftops glowing pale gold beneath the newborn sun. The station came into view, and with it, the soft rhythm of parting hearts. She turned to me. Do you ever wonder, she said, how many people we almost meet before the one we're meant to find? I smiled faintly. Maybe every almost leads us closer. Her eyes glistened, and for a moment I saw tears she didn't let fall. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead gently against mine. Her voice was barely audible. Thank you for the quiet. And then she was gone, a swirl of pale coat and morning light, disappearing into the misted platform. Sound cue. Train brakes sigh softly, doors close, faint footsteps fade. I sat there, notebook in my hand. The carriage was empty now, but it still felt full of warmth, of breath, of the echo of her voice. When the train began to move again, I opened to the last page she'd drawn, the sketch of the carriage window. Beneath it, in faint pencil, she had written 4 words. I closed the book, leaned back, and let the motion of the train cradle me once more. Outside, Vienna shone like a promise. Inside, I felt peaceful, not because I had arrived, but because, for once, I had truly been. Vienna woke slowly. Mist drifted through the streets like leftover dreams. The station behind me was almost silent now, just a few echoes of departing steps and the far-off hiss of steam fading into the light. I walked out into the waking city, the notebook still tucked under my arm, and the scent of fresh bread and snow mingled in the cool air. For the first time in years, I felt unhurried. The world didn't ask for anything. It simply existed, calm, ordinary, and kind. Sound cue, gentle footsteps on cobblestone, distant tram bell. I found a small cafe tucked between 2 narrow streets. Inside, candles still burned from the night before, their wax pooling like frozen time. I took a corner seat by the window, ordered black coffee, and opened her notebook again. Each drawing felt alive, the lines breathing softly, the eyes of strangers looking back with quiet stories of their own. On the inside cover, I noticed a folded scrap of paper I hadn't seen before. I opened it carefully. It was a single sentence, written in her elegant hand. Every arrival is only the start of remembering. Sound cues, soft piano chord, train rhythm faint in background, fading memory-like. I smiled. She was right. Journeys never truly end. They echo inside us, turning miles into meaning. Outside, trams rolled past slowly, their windows glowing with morning faces, ordinary people, each carrying a private world as vast as the one I had just left behind. Sound cue, pages turning softly. I began to write again, words that had been waiting in silence since the night we met. Some encounters, I wrote, don't belong to time. They belong to the spaces between heartbeats, the pauses between what we say and what we truly mean. The pen moved on its own, like the rhythm of a train I could still hear in memory. I wrote about her laughter, about the snow, about the way the world felt softer when she looked at it. Sound Q Street, violin outside cafe window, gentle tune. The music drifted in through the glass, a violin playing a melody I almost recognized. For a moment I could see her father's hands, her mother's sketches, her smile beneath the fading stars. It felt as though the city itself was finishing her song. Sound cue, coffee cup placed on saucer, faint murmur of other guests. A woman at the next table glanced at me, curious about my writing. I smiled politely. She returned the smile, and for a heartbeat, I saw something familiar in her eyes, that same warmth, that same quiet understanding. Maybe that's what love becomes when it survives the distance of time, not loss, but recognition. Sound cues, soft clock chime, faint winter breeze outside. As the morning light grew stronger, I closed the notebook and whispered to myself, she made it. Wherever Alina had gone, I hoped she had found her peace, or perhaps, like me, she had simply become it. Sound cue, gentle piano returns, slow and tender. I finished my coffee, left a few coins on the table, and stepped out into the brightening street. The snow had begun to melt. Drops of water fell from rooftops, catching sunlight like falling diamonds. I walked without destination, just letting the rhythm of the city guide me. In every window, I saw small reflections of our journey, a flicker of candlelight, a train passing in the distance, a pair of strangers meeting for the first time. It all felt connected, every sound, every glance, every fleeting moment of quiet beauty. Sound cue, piano softens, city sounds fade, wind becomes gentler. I reached the edge of the river. The water moved slowly, a mirror for the pale blue sky. I took one last look at the notebook, pressed it to my chest, and whispered, "Thank you for the journey." Then I closed my eyes, and for the first time in years I didn't feel like a traveler anymore. I felt home. It's strange how quiet the world becomes after a journey ends.